Hello and welcome to another edition of Pulp Picks. My name is Patrick.
I'm Fritz.
And we're here to give you this week's reading recommendations for another new comic book day. Tons of stuff coming out. I was just telling you, Fritz, that I was talking to a friend of mine who stopped in from out of town and visited the other night, and he's a big comic book reader. Has probably the biggest collection of anybody I know personally, has read a ton of stuff. And he said, there's not much coming out right now that I'm really excited about. And then he rattled off like 10 titles that he really liked. And then I asked him, have you read this one? Have you read that one? No, but I really like that writer. And, and I think sometimes we're so spoiled with how much stuff there is to be able to pick up. It almost makes you feel like when you get a week where you've only got a handful of books, it's like, oh, there's nothing coming out because you just are so used to being wowed.
Sometimes I wish I had a week where I only had a handful of books.
Well, we were just having that conversation too about how many. I know that you went to the Marvels last night, and that put you in a time crunch to be able to read everything. And you still read a whole bunch of books, but you've got a whole pile waiting for you. So out of the stuff that you did read.
So yeah, out of the stuff I did read, I read a bunch of good stuff, including everything we're going to get to here today. But my pick is the new Outsiders comic from DC. So it's a bit different from a lot of the more, really any kind of incarnation of the Outsiders. Yep. Like, it's not really kind of Batman's like behind the scenes team. It's not really like a Black Ops thing like they sometimes have been. This is more, and you'll definitely get it once you get into it. It's got more of like a late 90s, early 2000s Wildstorm vibe, like very much like a planetary thing. Like if you've ever read the Warren Ellis, John Cassidy series from the early 2000s, it's very much the kind of the spiritual successor to that. Where you've got Batwoman, you've got Batwing, and a new character here, not going to spoil too much for them, but they're kind of like exploring and cataloging the weird high strangeness that exists out there in the DC universe. Because when you've got a world where there's demons, interdimensional imps, various aliens, all kinds of stuff that's been going on Earth for thousands and tens of thousands of years, there's going to be weird things out there, and they kind of want to deal with find these things before they do become a problem. And it's by Lansing and Kelly, the people who did the recent Captain America run. They're doing Guardians right now. I feel like there was something else they've done that we've talked about on here before. They've got the new Timeless one shot coming out next month for Marvel, so check that out when that comes out. But I don't know. They're so good at tapping into the weird off the beaten path stories with these characters. If you loved the whole stuff of the Outer Circle for Captain America, I think you're really going to enjoy this. Just the weird behind the scenes stuff that everyday superheroes don't really see or deal with.
Yeah.
There's some cool callbacks, the thing they have to investigate in this, going back to that late 90s or 2000s Wildstorm stuff, you'll definitely enjoy that. There's definitely some seeds being planted, some seeds that might not turn out to be good for everyone here.
Yeah. I really liked how this was a very focused story with a small cast of characters to get this going.
Because that's a problem a lot of team books run into, where it's just there's too many people, so you never really get a good voice for anyone. Where this is just you've got these three, you get a real good feel for the dynamic. It helps that obviously two of them have been around each other before and teamed up a lot. But just I don't know, everyone they've got banter that bounces off of each other well. You see why their specific skill sets are good for the situation. And they kind of tease out that there might be other people floating in and out too. So it'll be interesting to see how that affects the dynamic there too. It's really funny how they kind of call out a lot of the other Bat books. Are man, there's just a lot of drama going on back in Gotham, and we just don't want to deal with that. It's fun drama. Detective is also great this week, but I don't know, it's always cool when you get, because that's the thing when people talk about there's so many Bat family books, and it's just But when they're each kind of doing their own thing like this, you can't really complain, especially when it's done this well.
Yeah, it had kind of a fun sci-fi mystery vibe.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked the art in it.
Mm-hmm.
The story moved right along. I've got lots of questions coming out of it. I think that's kind of, because it's got kind of an X-Files kind of vibe almost, right?
Yeah, like it's like the truth is out there kind of thing. Like what can they discover? I also just love any time heroes can like solve a problem without necessarily having to like beat something up. Like, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of punching and explosions in here, but like when they can like outthink a situation or like outfeel a situation too, it's just, I don't know, I love when stories are able to do that well.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. Well, I went with the new Star Wars Visions, and this one shot was by Peach Momoko, and so if you've seen the 2 seasons of Star Wars Visions on Disney, they are all kind of one-offs with an anime vibe to them, although they did kind of have Wallace and Gromit and some other studios. But initially that was certainly the vibe for the first season.
Yeah, basically like getting to allow these like various like artists and studios to kind of just like unshackle themselves from anything like canon or continuity, and just like, here's Star Wars, here's all the cool concepts, run with it. Yeah,
it really reminds me of, that video that was going around a number of years ago where it was just kind of like the opening to the Macross saga kind of thing that I don't know, the group of people did kind of just on their own.
Yeah.
And it was just like a cool X-Wing fighter pilot and TIE fighter pilot getting ready to... Yeah, it was just so similar to that kind of vibe, with it, which I'm sure all of you have probably seen it. So we're probably explaining something that we don't, but that is exactly what's going on here. So one of the hot artists in comics getting to tell, an unfettered Star Wars story. There is not a word of dialogue beyond the opening splash. Well, it's not even the splash page. It's the intro page.
There's like a little crawl to be like, hey, here's what's like kind of going on, and here's these characters, and then just like it dives right in, and there's no dialogue, and that's the thing. It doesn't really need it, because like everything you need to know is like it's either clearly communicated or like it's obfuscated in a way where just like you're supposed to be like, I'm not exactly sure what that's like happening.
Which kind of makes it cooler, right? Yeah, like the not exactly knowing, or the ability to be able to interpret it however you prefer. Yeah. Really super cool. But we still get a sense of who this main character is. Like the amount of emotion conveyed in the art, and I don't know, there's a level of determination, there's a level of self-doubt, like it's just super cool.
Also body horror out the wazoo.
Yes.
Terrifying.
Yeah. Some very cool visuals, and this is very much a light side versus dark side kind of story. I don't want to give too much away, but I'll tell you, I went through it twice. And I think that you could probably go through it 100 times and get something different from it every time. But it was just extremely enjoyable. It's very fun, and you don't have to have any exposure to any of the other Star Wars, much of anything. I mean, other than what you just pick up in popular culture in general. Like that, but you definitely don't need to be reading the comics.
Oh yeah, like that's what I love about like the stuff they had on Disney Plus for. It's just like, if like Star Wars, you can be like, oh, this is like a cool thing here or there, but like if you don't like it, honestly, in a lot of ways, it's kind of like the perfect introduction to Star Wars, because it gives you a lot of like thematic stuff. They do a lot of like the aesthetic stuff without like having to be bogged down, without like, you don't need to know who Luke Skywalker is, you don't need to know what the Clone Wars are.
Yep.
Like you can have the most bare bones, you can have the most like in-depth, like it's good storytelling.
Yeah, and I think for me, especially the animated shorts were very much, again, they had more of an anime vibe than they did per se it was anime vibe with Star Wars flavor, I would kind of say. But and this kind of continues along those lines. A lot of that storytelling sensibilities in there. So highly recommended. I'm not reading a single Star Wars book right now.
I am, and they're all pretty great. But like, and one of the things I like with these, like you said, they're one shots, so like you can just get in, get out, have a good story. The next one coming out, I think, it's either next month or January.
Yeah,
is from the creator of Afro Samurai.
Yes,
or I actually did a previous one shot. It's set within like the Ronin story from season 1 of Visions.
Oh yes.
So that's gonna be really good. When that happens.
The visuals for the preview for that one just look super cool. Yeah, very samurai kind of vibe. Yeah. Well, let's move on to our consensus pick this week, and not that so. I was talking to somebody else recently about how Christmas lights are up the day after Halloween on people's houses and stuff, and it was our friend Pat yesterday we were talking about, and don't skip a holiday, and so we're not trying to skip Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
But this is a Christmas book.
Yeah, it's a Christmas book.
Lighthearted and...
Well, I guess technically for like one person it's lighthearted. I don't know if they have a heart after that sequence.
Right, yeah.
But
so James Tynion,
Joshua Williamson, and who's the artist on here? Hassan Otsmane Ilham. I'm sorry, I probably butchered your name there, my guy.
I don't know who it is, but I'm unfamiliar with their work. It was amazing.
Great.
It fits so perfectly for this super horrible, creepy story. If you are, not a fan of horror or gore,
when they opened the barn, it's weird because I know I've seen I get worse things, but there was something about the presentation that was just so unsettling.
Yeah, unsettling is exactly the right word. It wasn't outright gory or horrific on a level that would put it in that category by itself. But the combination of some themes there,
the presentation, what it means within the context, the characters seeing it, their reaction is just so visceral in its way. But yeah, we should probably say what the comic's actually about first. So what it is
that's not easily said. This is going to be
so
interesting.
It's basically there's this writer, he's interviewing this person who is somehow involved with these serial murders decades ago, and
they are specifically in prison for those serial killings.
Yeah. And the thing is it kind of hints at maybe it was them, maybe it wasn't. It's kind of vague about some of the details, which I'm very curious to see what they get into, because one of the main things this comic is dealing with, by the title, The Deviant, is just kind of how society views things that are different from them, and whether that's good sometimes, whether it's bad sometimes, because one of the things that comes up in here is the intersectionality of how people who we commonly now associate with the queer community, how they have often been perceived as being deviant outside, just monsters in their own right, and then how that intersects with actual monsters, people who are out there murdering other people.
Well, right, and so the story starts in was it 1973?
It starts in modern times and then flashes back to 73. Yeah,
I guess I should say the story as the writer that we're seeing the point of view of the actual comic book being told. That story starts with this murder that is tied to a department store in Milwaukee around Christmas time in the early 70s.
Yeah.
So that puts a little more context into how society would have seen somebody and made them a scapegoat. That's a distinct possibility at this point.
Yeah, because if you know U.S. history, especially the 70s and 80s, were both a real big time for serial killers and a real big time for the rise of people trying to you had the combination of that's when a lot of the hate crimes against the queer community were happening, but it was also when they were trying to organize and hey, we're just people, let us live our life. So it's taking these two very different parts of American history and just kind of exploring them, and what I find to be there's conversations in here that we were talking about, there's some rough stuff being talked about.
Yeah, it makes you a little uncomfortable, and it I also really like the intergenerational dialogue between
Yeah.
these two characters that we're being told the story from, because their experiences are so similar in some ways and so extremely different in other ways. But it's really good. I'm very interested to see where it goes. It was a thick book. When I picked it up, I was like, oh man, this is going to take some time. But again, Tinian has a way of telling a pretty dense story with, and what has Joshua Hickson done?
Williams?
Isn't it Hickson?
Oh, is it Hickson?
Yeah.
Sorry, I shouted out the wrong guy earlier. I mean, Joshua Williams, also a good writer.
Yes.
So, yeah, Hickson, I'm not actually too familiar with him.
Yeah, so I'm not sure, but this gets so much. I feel like I read 3 comics when I read this one, without the time that it would take to do so. And again, the art is super cool. I don't think that we're giving away much by saying that the creepy psycho killer that's on the cover is dressed in Santa.
Like there's a whole like mall Santa aspect to it. Like the first time we actually like see them full on in the comic is just like absolutely terrifying.
It is, and so again, it's this kind of interesting ability to have this juxtaposition of what we expect and what we're getting. So you expect kind of a fat, jolly Santa.
Yeah.
What you're getting is a scarecrow-like, spindly, creepy Santa.
And there's like this weird sound effect that seems to fall.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh.
Their posture is disturbing. Their whole look is like everything. And that's also the setting the mood. So there's a scene where a character has to go back into the dark department store after they've forgotten something and after closing. And just that they really draw it out, and the use of shadows and black on the panel was just so good. It just set the tone. It's again one of those, I've said this before on these videos, when the story starts animating itself in my brain and I start kind of seeing it more as a TV show or a movie, the writing and the art are hitting on a level that are just
when you can so easily imagine like what happens between the panels in a way that feels intentional.
Almost move on the page, Yeah, it's so good. This definitely has that. It has got so many of the I was going to say positive vibes, but the positive. Good storytelling qualities of World Tree.
Yeah.
It's very reminiscent of that in the creepy factor for me, but excellent. So if you're looking for a good, wholesome Christmas story, maybe not this one. If you're looking for a great story,
Definitely not for the faint of heart, though.
Yeah, definitely not. This will not make you want to go check to see if the reindeer showed up in the backyard.
Yeah, this definitely,
Christmas Eve.
it feels like things are going to get worse before it gets better here, which, if you know me, that means I'm picking it.
Well, we're just getting to the can opener going around the can of worms here.
I would say
it hasn't even been opened.
Yeah, I would say you've literally just clicked it on, you haven't even started to turn.
Yeah. Well, we've heard the pop and we've gotten a terrible smell. That's about where we're at.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of which, now that you've enjoyed another video from us, we'll be back again next week. There's a ton of books. I read more books this week than I have in the last month on any given Wednesday morning, and I feel like I've been reading like crazy lately. Shout out to Larry Hama on the continuation of the G.I. Joe books. I never really read that. My experience with G.I. Joe was much more the toys and the cartoon. But it was really cool to be able to have Skybound reprint his original story, which they allowed it to be the original script. Apparently, editorial at Marvel back in the day changed some stuff on him, and it's been kind of bothering Hama ever since. So this is his original script. Minor changes. So it's not going to be a huge difference for you, but he thought that they were very important. And then that takes you to where Skybound now has the continuation of it through now the 4th publisher.
Yep.
So,
and speaking of G.I. Joe, if you've been enjoying Void Rivals and Transformers, there's 2 new G.I. Joe miniseries coming out tied into that. Duke starts next month. Cobra starts in January. So make sure to get in and let us know you want those on your pull list.
Yeah, absolutely. They're going to be hot like the rest of the Energon universe has been so far. So I am positive that we're going to sell out again. And be sure to check out the website and the app. that's where you can sign up for all of that stuff. You can also do it here in the store. So, stop in and see us. We love to see everybody, and leave your comments and come in and tell us what you're reading, because, that's what this is really all about. It's all about community and enjoying stories and sharing what we like about them. So we'll be back next week to do more of the same. Thanks for joining. Have a great day. Oh, James Tinian, you got me again.
He's probably up there for Ewing now for like most appearance on here.